feature presentation.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 111 of the Untitled Movie Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Matt Rohrbeck, alongside he's allergic to tomatoes, but he is tomato meter approved, Eric Marchin.
Matt, it's January in Canada, specifically Ontario. The last couple of days have been a little bit trying because of the
freezing over, basically.
Yeah, the blizzard and, snow being a snow day, but also not being a snow day because a lot of people do work for home. But if you are a parent and have to take your kid to daycare or have to go into work, I'm sure it was a major inconvenience to a lot of people. Our premier made a complete idiot of himself on CP24, and basically was driving while talking and doing
on
interviews.
FaceTime.
And it's just like,
just
Doug Ford
the
is
biggest
the worst,
knob, the knob. Yeah, for people who aren't, from Ontario or the GTA, we had a huge blizzard over the last, probably the biggest one we've had in quite some time, a couple feet of snow. And we're also in a lockdown right now. So it was just, when I mean hell freezing over, it's like we were already in hell and then it literally froze over to the point where you were pretty much locked inside your home. And just horrible timing on my end too, because Nevis and I went to Ottawa on the weekend to go skating on the canal. I'll talk a little bit about that because there's not much movie news or things. We'll talk about some random stuff.
You needed to get out. You needed to just go somewhere for a day.
And go outside, even though it was fucking freezing. It was like minus 30 with the wind chill.
Well, did your beard freeze?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I have some photos. And like my eyelashes were all frozen over and my beard was freezing. But we wore masks for a lot of the time, which actually helped for like warmth and stuff. Yeah. But then if you would take the mask off, it would just freeze. But we got home and then this blizzard happened that evening on Sunday evening. And we didn't do groceries or anything, so our fridge was basically empty. And then we were fucked for the last 2 days because Uber Eats was down. And you didn't, again, I contemplated ordering an iced coffee from Starbucks, and Nevis was like, "Don't do that, you idiot." And I'm like, "But I really need it." And she's like, "Go walk to Tim Hortons at the gas station." She's like, "You should not be ordering Uber Eats right now." And I'm like, "That's fair. That's fair." So I did walk to Tim Hortons 2 days in a row in like 3 feet of snow to go get an iced coffee because I couldn't live without it. But our fridge was basically empty, so we were at that point of just like scrounging whatever scraps we had in our pantry and our fridge, and like Nevis improvised and make this pasta with like a leftover sauce we had and or tomatoes and some beans and shit and made this it tasted really good, but it was just scrounging every morning and lunch going fuck, we have no food and we don't want to drive anywhere. We got a low tire pressure warning when we were on our way to Ottawa, and I'm a moron and Nevis and I don't know anything about cars, so we're just what do we do? And called my dad, and he's like, it's probably because of the cold. And then and yesterday during the blizzard, one of our chairs flew over the balcony because the wind was so bad, and it was a nightmare.
But no one got hurt.
It was no, thank God, dude. I was so stressed, and Nevis was too, and we felt awful about it, and we're just thank God no one was walking in that area, because it fell. We're on the 10th floor and it fell off of our balcony, and we had everything tied down. We had covers on everything and tied down. It broke off the clasp. I sent you a photo of the chair, and the clasp was still on the chair because it ripped it right off because of the wind, and it fell near the loading dock area, 10 stories. And it was just Jesus Christ. It was so the last couple days have been, interesting. So yeah, anyways, locked ourselves inside. Ottawa was fun. It was just nice to get out. Like you were saying, it was a long drive, 4.5 hours each way, but stayed over in a hotel, and I've never been skating on the Rideau Canal. So Nevis had, she said maybe 15 years ago or something like that, but she bought a pair of skates. I got my old skates out from when I was a teenager. They still fit, sort of. They hurt my feet so bad, dude.
Oh, especially after, I could imagine, right?
Yeah, that's what it even during, it was my feet probably just got fatter, so I think they were like wider. Like it still kind of fit lengthwise for the most part, because you're at a certain point you stop growing, but like that doesn't mean you stop putting on fat.
Tarantino loves fat feet though. You're still good.
But it was a blast. Like the first night we got there,
a blast or a blizzard.
It was a little bit of both, but it was so much fun. Like it's 8 kilometers long, skating down this entire river or canal. And we went the first night, and we went at night, like around 5 p.m. as the sun was setting, and it was gorgeous with the lights coming on and the sun setting. But it was, I think, after 4.5 hours of driving, getting a pretty bad sleep the night before. We lasted about 45 minutes and only did about 2 kilometers. And we're like, my feet hurt. I'm exhausted. Like, let's maybe pack this up. We'll go back to the hotel. We'll get some drinks and we'll hang out there. And then we'll wake up early tomorrow and go. And then the next morning we watched a lot of Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives, which is like my go-to hotel room show. Do you have something that like I know you don't, I guess when you do a lot of the Critics' Choice stuff, Eric, like, is there a show that I always like flipping through cable in a hotel room because it's something I don't usually just do at home anymore.
Right.
So it's kind of fun and nostalgic to just like flip through the cable at a hotel room. And I always find myself on the Food Network watching Diners, Drive-Ins and Dives. That's like my go-to hotel show.
Well, Guy Fieri, right? You know, our Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
You know, when it depends. Like when I go to LA, I kind of like, or even New York, I kind of like watching local news shows, like morning shows, because I kind of like the tackiness of it.
Yeah.
In terms of just like locally, I don't think there's anything that I'd be like, oh, like this is like a comfort watch. I do like putting the TV on just to have it as like background noise. And I usually flip through just to find like,
I like to find a movie that's on some like TNT or some shit.
Yeah. But there's not like one thing, you know, like Triple D.
It's always triple, and it's always on.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's just Food Network at 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. is like, we're putting Guy Fieri for like 4 hours. It's like, so there was that.
Those frosted tips, baby.
God, and he's the best and the worst. So we woke up the next morning and skated the entire 7.8 kilometers of the canal. And so we got some McDonald's breakfast. We ate it on the ice before we put our skates on. Had a giant coffee, and which got cold almost instantly because it was so cold out. And it
was already cold to begin with, right?
Yeah, and kind of. But it was just such a cool experience for Nevis and I, because like it was a lot. Like we didn't expect to do the whole 7.8 kilometers, but we got out there and we felt exhilarated, and it was freezing, but it was kind of nice to, you know, just kind of have that fresh air and just do something you haven't really done in a long time. And it took a while. Like I was so wobbly on my skates, and like I think I'm a pretty decent skater. I played hockey for the majority of my life, and I just don't go skating that often anymore. So like my ankles were just like this for the first little while, but after you're out there for 20-30 minutes, you kind of get your feet back. And skated the whole 7.8, and we got there and we're like, okay, I guess we got to go back because like we didn't want to take transit. And if you walked, like the fastest way to get back was to skate back. So then we did the 7.8 kilometers on the way back as well. And it was a struggle on the way back, but we stopped and got some like hot apple cider and some waters. And they have a whole bunch of stuff like on the actual canal, like cafe and beaver tails and very Canadian things like that. If people don't know what that is, they're like a Canadian pastry thing, almost like how would you explain it? Like a doughy kind of, not like a pancake, but like it's like a doughy. It's like if you had like imagine a flatbread was sweet, like a sweet flatbread. like a naan or flatbread, and then you can get different toppings on it, and like
sometimes it's even like deep fried as well, or
yes,
like
that's
it's
what it is. It's like
crispier, right?
it's like a deep fried flatbread, sweetbread kind of thing. Not sweetbreads as in brains, but like
You love brains.
but we got a beaver tail. I did a classic Canadian. I went maple, so they put some maple syrup and some maple crackling on it. Delicious.
The texture, you know what it reminds me of? What's that thing that they always sell at Taco Bell? It's like the cinnamon sticks, or like this.
Really, it's not that crunchy though. Those are
No,
pretty,
but the texture kind of has
sure.
a similar kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
At least
they usually are dusted with cinnamon,
Yeah.
and you can get like a classic one that's like cinnamon sugar and like lemon that you squeeze on it, and then they have like, you know, Score or Reese's Pieces, and like some of them are like a lot, and I don't get the ones with like a ton of frosting or anything, but they're a very Canadian thing. You see them.
It's
in a
almost
lot
like
of
Cinnamon Toast
like,
Crunch in a way, a little bit. Like it's
a little, yeah. They got a nice crunch, but then they
yeah.
got a nice pull in the middle. Like it's a little doughy, and but they're pretty good. But yeah, man, skating was a blast. Ottawa was nice. I've been there as a kid, maybe driving through or something for like one of my sister's dance competitions or something, but I hadn't been as an adult to Ottawa, and it has a nice good mix of, I feel like, Toronto and Montreal, where it's like a big city, but it has some older buildings, and walked around Parliament quickly. But it was so cold. Like I haven't spent that much time outside in that kind of weather in a very, very long time. So it was like, you know, wearing layers and layers of clothing and scarves and toques, but you know, and eventually your feet just go numb. And but had a really, really good time doing that. So not movie related at all, but again,
but a good change of pace.
Yeah, exactly. And Nevis brought up a good point before we started recording, and I think Barry Hertz tweeted this out the other day, where we were driving, and on the way there's a town called Gananoque, and they have the only movie theater in quotes open in Ontario right now, and it's a drive-in. It's the only place playing Scream in Ontario and even Quebec, like in this whole surrounding area. So they're open right now, and we could have stopped to see Scream at a drive-in, but it was like -30 out, and it'd be even colder at night. And I didn't even know it was happening while we were passing it. But if you're in that area, you could go see Scream, which no one else can right now. So,
and you don't want to get into a fight with a rival karate gang, you know, during the winter, right? So
yeah, it just hurts too much. So that was my weekend, and then being kind of snowed in the last couple days and having to survive off of gas station Tim Hortons and whatever scraps.
I was going to ask you that, because like you said the last couple of days, like we always talk about it, but you know, when you're desperate or you're feeling lazy, and we've both mentioned that, you know, we live near Tim Hortons, but how was
neither of us like it?
How was the iced coffee?
It's not great. Like, and every time I go, the service is awful. And again, I try not to. I was really grumpy on the first morning because like I can't survive without like a giant coffee in the morning. I've become so dependent on it that like I will trek through 3 feet of snow to a gas station Tim Hortons just to drink their shitty coffee just because like I need it. And the service is always bad. The gas station is always filled with like garbage people, and like one guy just fully not wearing his mask when I was in there waiting for my mobile order. And I found that mobile ordering to that gas station Tim Hortons the worst idea in the world, because no one does it. So whenever I go in, they're always just like forgot. They don't even check if someone mobile ordered, and then they are like, the one woman's on her break or something, and then the other woman's doing the 7 people that are in line at the gas station Tim Hortons, and then no one's fulfilling my order, and I'm just standing there, and she's like, oh, she'll be out soon, and she's just finishing her break, which I get it. We're in the middle of a pandemic. They got to work through all this. We're in the middle of a blizzard where they had to come into work. Like I'm trying to be patient with people, but it's also just like I'm standing in this gas station Tim Hortons for like 20 minutes just waiting for my fucking iced coffee and a breakfast sandwich. And yeah, the coffee is garbage, and I kind of mask it now. Like I still don't get sugar in it, but I'm like, I almost have to put a little bit of cream in it, because then I feel like it masks the horrible taste of their coffee, and it just makes it this like, you know, I don't know. It's bad, but it's not like, I guess it's better than nothing. because I am so dependent on it that I just kind of, it's my one routine I have every morning is like, I wake up, I need to have a gigantic iced coffee, whether it's from made at home or, I should just be making it at home. And I got into a good routine during the pandemic, but I fall out of it and whatever. But it's terrible, but it I guess gets the job done. I don't know. I like their breakfast sandwiches though. If I'm gonna give Tim Hortons a compliment, like I feel like their breakfast sandwiches are decent. Like their sausage breakfast sandwich on a biscuit, which is horrible for you, is pretty good. But I'd still probably take a McDonald's over Tim Hortons. Like I would put Tim Hortons at the bottom of the like coffee and sandwiches and things like that.
And that's where they get their coffee as well, from the bottom. Like
it's awful.
It's sometimes
really
it's weird how inconsistent the Tim Hortons
Yeah.
iced coffee is, because I had one this morning as well, and it was better than the last Tim Hortons coffee I had, which was Thursday last week. And Thursday last week's Tim Hortons coffee tasted weirdly like it was soiled. Like there was something in it that was like off, but that's how it sometimes just tastes normally, and you just kind of have to accept it. Like they didn't stir it properly, or
so here's the thing, like I feel like
out like at the bottom of whatever they had left.
I think their iced coffee is just, and I think McDonald's used to do this too, or maybe they still do, is just like, they can only serve the coffee for so long, right? Like the hot coffee. And then I feel like it's whatever's left when they're not allowed to serve it anymore, or shouldn't, because it's either gotten cold or is too old. They just like dump it into that thing. Or that, and that's the thing why I like cold brew. I know you're not a big cold brew guy.
I'll take cold brew. Don't get me wrong. Like
I just like it more because it's brewed specifically to be consumed cold. So I feel like when you brew hot coffee and then just pour it into a thing, sometimes they just serve it hot and pour it over ice. So it gets hella watered down because the ice just all melts, and then there's 2 melted ice cubes, and I feel uncomfortable drinking it because it's like warm. It's like not even cold. It's just now warm, or like just sort of cool, and like has 2 ice cubes that are half melted in it. And I'm just like, this is awful. And then you got to put more ice in it when you get home or something like that, because it's not cold enough because all the ice melted, and they just served you hot coffee over ice. Or it's like old stale coffee that they just like, oh, let's dump it in here and serve it to the iced coffee people. So at least with cold brew, it's like, oh, we brewed this specifically for, to be consumed cold. The thing on top of that, though, is cold brew can be like, I drink cold brew, but I've gotten used to it, but it has so much more caffeine than regular iced coffee, and because it's just concentrated. And depending, the tricky thing with cold brew is whoever's making it for you is like, it can be fucked up, because like if they don't mix it with water or your milk properly, that you're just getting pure cold brew concentrate, which is like a punch to the heart. And like I've had cold brew sometimes where you're like Kramer from Seinfeld, you're just like on edge and just like jittery on everything that's happening around you. So welcome to the coffee cast. We have no movie stuff to talk about, but yeah, I still prefer, I think Starbucks, and I know a lot of people shit on Starbucks, and I prefer like a good independent place any day.
Even just McDonald's iced coffee, like I think is actually, and their coffee
McDonald's
in general
coffee
is kind
good.
of underrated.
Yeah.
I mean, like obviously they've expanded on it with McCafe, and have kind of leaned into it more in the last decade or so. But I agree with you in the sense of, I think Tim Hortons is the bottom of the barrel, and then like it's also really bad for you in the sense that their classic iced coffee, because now you can customize your iced coffee like most places, but before it was usually the iced coffee was like
filled with sugar and cream.
Yeah, and that's all it is, and that kind of helps mask some of the sort of bitterness
burnt
and
Tim Hortons coffee always tastes burnt.
But if you don't do that, then you're just stuck with this like really disgusting kind of, lukewarm coffee that is at best serviceable in terms of like getting you that kind of like quick caffeine fix, but it doesn't do much than that. And then if you get the classic iced coffee at Tim Hortons, it's full of sugar and fat, and it's just like you would be better off drinking a milkshake at that point, because
McDonald's as well,
at least
though,
it's
too.
more enjoyable. No, McDonald's as well, but I feel like McDonald's, at least it tastes more like coffee than
I agree
the iced coffee at Tim Hortons, because the iced coffee at Tim Hortons, to your point, just tastes like it's burnt
water.
Like,
burnt water. It's both watered down and incredibly burnt and awful tasting. And then I agree with you that you kind of need that other stuff, but then it just tastes like watered down cream and sugar with a hint of bitterness.
Yeah, like if I'm gonna put on, the extra weight or have the extra calories, I'd rather go to McDonald's or have something that is fattening, because at least I can enjoy it. Where
it's just empty calories that for no reason. Like, yeah, I'm a soft boy now and I get oat milk and everything, but like Tim Hortons at certain locations has oat milk now, and they have cold brew at certain locations, but the gas station one, it's just a clusterfuck every time I go there, and they either don't have things, but they still let me place mobile orders. So I get there and they're like, yeah, we don't have 3 out of the 4 things you wanted. And I'm like, okay, can I get a refund? And they're like, no. They're like, no, you got to contact head office for that. And I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And they're like, we can give you like a plain bagel and a old fashioned Timbit. And I'm like, those are the 2 worst things you have. And that's all you have.
I mean, we've talked about this with the
the Tim
Justin,
Biebs,
the Tim Biebs, where like the old fashioned Timbit is like, nobody wants that. No one ever. And if you order that, that is a sign that you might be a sociopath.
Yeah, it's the driest shit ever.
Like, even people that are like dunking it in their coffee or their drink, like it's so bland and it just completely dries out your mouth. And again, nobody seeks that out. Like it comes in
if you buy a pack of Timbits, like a mixed pack, and they throw some of those in there, they're always the shit that's left over. Like they have this weird tinge of sweetness, but it tastes like you're eating the desert, and it's just like it's the worst.
But it's also funny just to think like we're bad mouthing Tim Hortons and criticizing them, but again, I think it's deserved. But at the same time, you always see lineups in both the store or through the drive-through, and it is one of the most profitable Canadian
very
companies.
Canadian. Very Canadian, man. I don't know. We'll get to talking to movies in a sec, but if you guys want some other movie content, we have some reviews out right now. You guys can check out Cobra Kai 4, The Kingsman, Licorice Pizza, Red Rocket, a lot of the kind of stuff that came out at the tail end of last year. You guys can check out reviews for, but Eric and I also will have reviews that you guys can check out for the first season of Yellow Jackets. Eric and I both watched the entire first season and had a conversation about that, so go check that out on the reviews channel. As well as the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker on HBO Max and Crave here in Canada, as well as the first 3 episodes of The After Party, which is on Apple TV Plus, which is the Chris Miller show. So not Phil Lord and Chris Miller, although Phil Lord is producing it with him and wrote one of the episodes, but Chris Miller is the directed it. So you can check out our conversation on the
or as he goes by in the credits, Christopher Miller.
Okay, Christopher Miller, as well as our review for The Tragedy of Macbeth, also on Apple TV Plus. So we've pivoted to streaming stuff in January, because as you can tell in the first 23 minutes of this episode, we talked about coffee in Ottawa and skating and things like that. There's not a lot going on in the entertainment world. Like, movies are still obviously coming out, because in the United States, they're treating it like there is no pandemic and everything's open and ready for business. So Scream came out, had a pretty good opening weekend of beat out Spider-Man, had, I think it was like 30 to 40 million. We still haven't been able to see Scream. Like we mentioned, there's one drive-in playing it here, but it's 3.5 hours away. So we're not going to go do that in the middle of winter in a blizzard, but still some stuff out there. Our last kind of 2 episodes of this show, the Untitled Movie Podcast, is great. They're both like 3 hours. Eric and I talked about the best movies of 2022 in episode 110, and we also did the most anticipated movies of 2022 in episode 109. So if you want some more content, head over there, and you have about 6 hours worth of Eric and I blabbing about last year and this year. Also, announcement on our first guest of the year. Pretty cool thing. Next week, Eric and I will be doing our first ever live episode of the Untitled Movie Podcast with guest Greg Miller from Kinda Funny. So, really cool. I've been listening to Greg on podcasts for what feels like over a decade, since he was at IGN on Podcast Beyond, a PlayStation podcast. That it was kind of my introduction to podcasts. I've always said Podcast Beyond and the official Lost podcast were the two podcasts that I first started listening to what feels like a century ago. So a really cool opportunity. We've had Nick Scarpino, Tim Geddes, Joey Noel from Kinda Funny all on the show. So it's cool to finally have Greg on the show, and it'll be part of a big podcasting day where Greg is doing a podcast-a-thon with people from the community that have their own podcasts. And I've been on screencasts before and other things like that, so it's just cool to finally do something with Greg. So next Friday, which is January the 28th, I believe.
Yes.
We'll be doing at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, an hour-long podcast with Greg Miller that will be live streamed on twitch.tv/kindafunnygames. So Eric and I will be chatting with Greg. We're going to talk about video game movies. I know Greg's a big a champion of movies coming out day and date at home, the same day that they come out in theaters, especially being a new dad as well. So it'll be fun to talk to Greg. I know he's not known as the movie guy, but he is on In Review. He pops up on screencasts. He's a huge dork just like us. So it'll be fun to kind of talk to Greg, and he'll be our first guest of the year. And then hopefully that leads into bringing more and more people on this year for different episodes. So it'll be fun to kind of do a live episode. We hope you guys can tune in, or it'll be up on podcast services and YouTube after as well. So that's really cool. Eric, how about you? How was your weekend? Have you been watching much, or has it been mostly, I know we've both been kind of in TV mode lately.
Yeah, it's been one of those weekends, and even before that, where, and I'm sure you've been feeling this way as well, where you kind of just aren't motivated maybe to kind of like get back on track, because there are, certain factors where it's like, okay, well, the theaters aren't open, so we're not doing, there's no press screenings to go to, there's no digital link, so we're not covering Sundance this year, so there's nothing really to kind of have to, we don't have to actually,
we're not like committed to anything right now.
So we're in limbo basically, and it kind of feels like, well, we're on this extended leave or vacation where it's like, okay, we'll do an episode here or there, or throw out some content if need be. But it's like, we don't have to really answer to anybody. We don't have to submit anything because of deadlines. So, I've been basically just kind of like watching more TV than film recently, because I feel like with television, when I'm watching it, there's less of a commitment to sort of over-analyzing television than there is film, and it's
because you don't officially cover it. We do some stuff over
exactly
here,
so it's almost like a weird break from movies as well. And then the last time I actually went anywhere, like your trip to Ottawa, was a few weeks ago now, when my brother Kyle was over. We went to my dad's farm in Newtonville and hung out there for the day, and it was a nice day. They my dad and my stepmom, they recently they have a new sort of breed of dogs that they're looking after, these puppies, and they're old enough now where they're starting to open their eyes and sort of bark and things like that, and it's fun kind of holding and playing with them, and it's therapeutic in a lot of ways. So that was kind of like a nice change of pace again, and sort of just getting outside and kind of hanging out with goats and horses and all that jazz. Rode a tractor, which was fun.
Sick. Did you drive it or just ride in it?
Just ride in it. But yeah, other than that, like, not a lot has happened. I mean, if we want to keep in sort of like the criticizing or critiquing of food, I tried the spicy McChicken burger at McDonald's, and I went for the ghost chili pepper sauce. And I gotta say, I was a little bit underwhelmed by it. Not that I'm saying that like I didn't feel anything while eating it, but it almost felt like it was a diluted version of what it could actually be. Like its potency only lasted for a little bit before it kind of eventually kind of dissipated. And I was thinking to myself, like, everything I've seen, like, I've been going through this weird kick right now where I've been eating a lot of spicy food, but I've been also watching a lot of people on YouTube eating spicy food. And like, specifically, I now want to try a drop of Da Bomb sauce. So I actually ordered some. So I
did you?
Do
nice.
it for this show.
I would love that. I would like to try it too sometime.
So I was thinking maybe we could do like I almost feel like we're prop comics doing this, but like we could do like our little an episode where we try it and see if we can get through the episode.
Yeah, I'm down.
So yeah, I, again, like, I was kind of underwhelmed by the hot sauce, where like, every time we go out to Thai, there's this really wonderful Thai restaurant near the Lightbox in Toronto.
Khao San Road, yeah.
Yeah, and their food is generally spicy, but it's spicy in
and flavorful,
sort of and it's very tasty, and it kind of gets you to keep eating it, but it actually does like affect you. And with this, and again, I'm not trying to compare this really wonderful restaurant to McDonald's, but like I was expecting more from
when something
sauce.
Says ghost pepper and has like 5 flames on it, because McDonald's whole gimmick right now is they have a bunch of different McChickens with different levels of spicy sauce, right? Like there's like a habanero one, a spicy Szechuan one, and then this ghost pepper one. And I feel like we either tried this or maybe we did the habanero one years ago. I remember when they almost did this, but I don't know if we ever did the ghost pepper. When something says ghost pepper, you think it's going to be really spicy.
Those muffins that you made that one time were more spicy than this.
Right.
McChicken
I forgot
sandwich.
I did that. I had some weird muffin mix, cornbread, right?
Yeah.
It was like a cornbread thing that I made into muffins. Yeah. You know what? The spiciest thing I'd ever had was at Momofuku in Toronto. I did their spicy noodle. And I think I've told this story before, but I remember the waitress being like, are you sure it's like really spicy? And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty good with spicy stuff. Like you said, at Khao San Road, like I can do, I think I've even done the Thai spicy once, which was really hot. But usually you get like the regular person spicy, and then it's pretty hot but manageable. But at Momofuku, they're like, okay, and I'm like, I'll be fine. And they brought out some soy milk with it, and like I didn't order soy milk; they just brought it with the meal, like it was part of it. And I was like, oh no, and like that's when you know you're gonna be absolutely screwed. And I could only have like 2 mouthfuls, and I'm like, I can't eat this; it's too hot. And I'm with you. I love spicy food, and I've thought about getting. I'm not a huge McChicken guy at McDonald's either way. Like I don't know. I like the junior chicken more. It has a good spice to it. That's like barely spicy, but like good. And I've just never been a huge McChicken person. I know Nevis likes them, but like that's a bummer that but that doesn't also surprise me, because I feel like if you're going to McDonald's, they know who is going to McDonald's, and they can't make something like too spicy.
Yeah, it seems almost like they're covering themselves from lawsuits if like, somebody eats it based on like a prank, or like tries to do it and it's too much.
Gastrointestinal problems or something like yeah. So
it's a liability at that point. So again, like it feels like you're getting just like the preview of what it could be, and then it just dissipates, and you're just kind of like, okay, like it is, again, it is spicy, but it's not spicy in the way that I think, like I after having eaten it, I don't think I've actually had the experience of eating anything ghost chili pepper related still. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Where
there's chips that we could get too. Those really hellish.
Well, there's the nuts as well, where it's like the death nuts, where like they go up in numbers. And then I've been watching a lot of like people eating spicy stuff. Like Matt Stoney did a Da Bomb episode where he put a whole bottle of it, and it's a small bottle, it's like that, but he put the whole thing on spaghetti bolognese, and he couldn't get through it, and he's like this like world competition eater, and he struggled.
That sounds so awful, but I'm definitely down to try a little bit of it.
Yeah,
at least.
Yeah. I don't want to like eat like a. I mean, it gives you the warning as well that you're not supposed to eat that much of it.
I mean, a good transition to I watched the entire Jackass trilogy.
So are you snorting wasabi now?
Oh my god, there are so many like uncomfortable moments in that movie, in the whole trilogy, really. And I tweeted out a few thoughts of it. Sorry, I'm taking time codes as I do this. But yeah, I just in preparation for Jackass Forever, which comes out in a few weeks at the beginning of February.
Will it come out in Ontario?
God, I hope so. But because those movies, I think, benefit from a crowd experience for sure, or at least watching with friends, like even if it was just me and you watching it together, because I think you feed off of the laughter. Because like I did laugh quite a bit in watching them, but like I watched them while Nevis was sleeping and I had headphones on, and I just kind of threw them on, and they are both an easy watch and an uncomfortable watch at times, and they're only an hour and 20 minutes each or whatever, right? But
beautiful
it's they still hold up, and I think a lot of it is really, really funny. But now as I'm almost a 30, how old am I turning 33? Is that what I'm turning?
You're turning 33 this year on February the 8th.
Yeah, in like a couple weeks. Everyone send your birthday presents. I don't expect that from anyone. So anyways, as a 33-year-old man now and not a dumb teenager, you look at it in a little bit of a different light. And I mean, those guys were, I think, in their 20s during that first movie, right?
Were they?
Or 30s?
It's I don't know, because when we saw that, we were kids, right?
Yeah.
And it's just funny thinking,
being R-rated in Canada, I think, and we had to sneak in.
Well, I keep thinking about the last time we did a show, and you were talking about Seinfeld and the characters being in their early 30s.
George is supposed to be my age,
or
our
you're
age.
Just like, how is that possible?
Elaine and George, I think, are supposed to be in their early 30s. But Kramer and Jerry's supposed to be in his late 30s, and then Kramer's supposed to be in his 40s, I think. So like a wide range of, between your 30s and 40s. But like that's still, when they were like, oh, George is the same age as you, I was like, oh shit. But yeah, in Jackass, they were obviously a lot much younger. And that first movie, I think, doesn't really hold up or holds up the least out of them. Like that one felt a lot like how I felt watching what was that movie we really didn't like with Eric Andre earlier this year? Bad Trip, in the point where I'm like, it focused a lot on fucking with other people instead of fucking with each other. And that's a weird sentence, but like, you know what I mean, in the sense of like messing with one another,
unwilling participants.
Yes, and that's exactly what I tweeted. So that first movie, there's a lot of them kind of messing with people who didn't either want to be in the movie or agreed to it afterwards because they came up to them and were like, oh, we're just messing around, sign this release and we'll put you in the movie.
And you're specifically, I think you're referencing as well the stuff in Japan, which is a big part of it,
and is offensive as well. A lot of the stuff that they do, it just, the music choices that they use when they're there and
turning Japanese,
and just messing with people in Japan just feels icky. As well as the stuff at the golf course and like and other things like that, like just people who don't deserve to be messed with, and they just constantly, and like the destruction of property and stuff like that. And like I'm sure they maybe either paid these people for the damages or whatever afterwards. It's still like that initial thing of just fucking with people just like to get a reaction that isn't very funny to me. Like it's way funnier to me when someone runs over and punches Johnny Knoxville in the dick than it is them like messing with some store owner because they went in there to smash something or take a shit. Like the shit in the toilet is funny, but like in the hardware store, but if you really think of it, I'm like, that's some poor guy's fucking store that you're just like you're just absolutely messing with him. And even if the producers go back and say, oh, here's some money, we're sorry, kind of thing, we'll buy the toilet, we'll take it out of the store and whatever. I hope they did all that in those first movies, but who knows. It's just some of that stuff just did not hold up for me. Like, there's still obviously the stuff where they just create like wild contraptions and just do stuff and hurt themselves is like, all right, they all agreed to be in this movie. They all, that's what they became popular for. Like, that stuff is still either uncomfortable or uncomfortably funny or just genuinely funny, or even can be creative in disgusting ways. But that first movie just, I feel like, holds up the least. Like, even when Bam
Well, Bam
messes with his,
himself,
yeah, yeah,
Margera is problematic now.
yes,
So.
now, but I mean, in these first movies, like, again, I loved Viva La Bam. I loved Bam Margera back then, of just his idiotic things. But when he was messing with his parents, I felt like there was still, like, some sort of, like, they understood the kind of thing when
Right.
April and Phil are just getting messed with, and like,
Well, Phil
but it's just,
specifically. Jeez.
yeah, yeah. But then there's just like random stuff that I think doesn't hold up. And then I think they get better as they go along, where 2 is better than 1 and 3 is better than 2. So it'll
It's
be
like the
interesting.
Toy Story trilogy.
Yeah, and then it'll be interesting to see them now as older men, and like even the stuff where the dirty grandpa stuff or whatever, bad grandpa stuff with Spike Jones and stuff. I'm like, they're old enough now where they don't even have to dress up. But it's just that stuff I could go either way with, but I just more like the stunts that they do or the pranks that they pull on one another, and that stuff, to an extent, I think is funny. But then there's some stuff like unwanted, nudity and like stuff like that, where like Wee Man's running through a boardroom of people at a hotel or whatever, like naked. Like, when you think of it back then, you're like, oh, that's really funny. And then when you think of it now, it's just like, I don't know, exposing yourself to people that don't want to see that is just not cool, right? So it's just like interesting watching it from the lens of 2022, and like I'm curious to see this new one. If I'm assuming they'll all just be stunts where they're messing with one another, and they'll be like prank stuff in the public, and getting people's reactions can be funny. I mean, look at Nirvana the band, the show, which has a mix of scripted stuff and messing with people in the public, but it never feels mean spirited, right? Like, at least in my opinion. Where
Well, there's also Impractical Jokers, right, which is
yeah,
kind of popular as well. But I feel like that is kind of like borderline, like messing with people in a way. I wanted to ask you though, like, if you feel that way about the Jackass films, did you feel that way, or do you feel that way now about Borat as well, where like it is messing with people in a certain
but remember
way?
we talked about it even with subsequent movie film and the longer title, but like Borat, I use this exact comparison where I feel like when it depends on who you're targeting and what your statement is, and we, I think, had a really interesting conversation in that second Borat movie review where we went over this exact thing. So I encourage people to go check that out. But my thoughts there is that Sacha Baron Cohen has a thesis statement that he's kind of making in both of those movies, and an analysis of American culture and the people in the United States, and that it is a little mean spirited at times, and I think certain skits work better than others. But I feel like at the time he's always kind of trying to point out someone else doing something shitty. So like his comedy or what he's doing is has a purpose to it, even if it's not politically correct or can be kind of jabbing or taking someone. Again, it goes back to they are an unwilling participant, and I think that's a bigger conversation too, right? And maybe I'm saying, well, those people are shitty, so if they're exposing shitty behavior,
You're
then it's
specifically
okay.
talking about with
Yeah.
Borat, like America's South
Yeah,
specifically,
yes,
and also looking at how like racism and xenophobia, but also the level of intelligence
yeah,
of people from the South and how willing they are to participate
sure.
in somebody who is quote unquote a foreigner
Mhm. I
is
think that's
depicted.
kind of, yes. And then that's why I kind of give that a pass or think it's funny. And I think there are people who will disagree with that. And
Yeah, because
I think
I wanted to ask that because you mentioned the Wee Man thing, and I was thinking, well, there's
there's
the
that
naked
moment too,
wrestling
which
sequence, which
totally
yeah,
is very funny. Don't get me wrong, but I think is in that same. And I think even watching that first Borat movie before the sequel, there's a lot of stuff in there where I'm like, whew, I cannot believe they got away with a lot of this, and like, and even seeing how much he got away with the new one as well, and like, again, when it comes to all the other people that are willing participants in the movie that know what they're kind of getting into and go, if you're in this movie, you know you might be fucked with by someone else on the cast or something like that. But even then, like, I think there's a conversation to be said of depending who's on the crew and things like that. But no, I think it's a fair point. And I think it just depends on the scene or the prank that they're pulling, right? And that's the same for Jackass, where it's like some of it works, some of it didn't hold up. And like in the second one, and I guess you don't really have any unwilling participants, but the whole terrorist bit of like Aaron McGahey like darkening his skin and putting pubes on his face to make him look like a quote unquote terrorist, to go in a cab and have a fake bomb strapped to him. And even though it's Jay Chandrasekhar as the cab driver, so he's a participant in it, yeah. Who knows what's going on. So at least they're not doing this to some poor person who actually thinks something awful's happening or whatever. But there's just so much wrong in that sequence. And I know it kind of is just to fuck with Aaron and make him feel terrified. And he is a willing participant, even if he doesn't know exactly what's happening. That whole thing feels icky too, with the, you know, they're like, well, we're not making fun of anyone. We're just like, and I'm like, I don't know, guys. I don't think that's a good look. And I think that they could definitely not get away with that today. But then I'm saying, like, look at South Park and what they're able to get away with.
Even Team America, right? Like that. There's that one scene where,
but it's one if it's
goes undercover,
yeah,
right?
And like that's, I think, the fine line with comedy, right, is like what gets a pass and what doesn't, right? And I think that's subjective, and I think that it depends on, you know, who you are and what you think. And I mean, even going back to, you know, unfortunately, a big piece of news that happened before, in between our last episode, is Bob Saget passed away. And he was a guy who had a very raunchy style of stand-up comedy, even though he was known as this like lovable TV dad or America's Funniest Home Videos and things like that. And I think there would be people, you know, like Bob Saget, that would argue that like you can be just tell the dirtiest jokes or things that shouldn't be talked about, but you make light of them, and that there's something there in comedy. But I feel like that's evolving a bit, and I feel like if it's satire or if you're poking fun, like even Robert Downey Jr. and Tropic Thunder, like there's tons of examples of like things that shouldn't be okay, but you could make an argument of what they're doing is satirical or poking fun at actors or people who would do this, or people who are so self-serious of, you know, in Team America, of them trying to go undercover for this thing and them not being great people, and poking fun at the USA again and stuff like that. So but this just felt kind of wrong, but at least they don't just go into the public like that, because that could be very dangerous and very awful. So, and then the third one, I think if you look at them, they do evolve, and you can see the evolution of both these guys. They're still absolute morons and hurting themselves and all this stuff, but there's less problematic elements as the movies go on, and it's more them just messing with one another. And there's a little bit of like, they even go to India in the second movie, and they only use, I think, the leeches thing and one other thing. They don't use any of the, because I feel like even at that point they were like, okay, that bit we can get rid of. Like in the third one, I don't think they go to a foreign country to mess with people. They just do everything with 3D cameras, and then that was the bit. The phantom camera and the 3D cameras were the bit in the third one. And even not watching it in 3D still makes it the most enjoyable one. And I like the stuff where they do crazy stunts more than the disgusting stuff, but like the disgusting stuff, there's still something like weirdly fascinating about
and
it.
visceral.
And
it gets a real reaction out
like,
of you when you watch
because
someone paper cut themselves
or shit or something,
or drink
like I don't
sweat water from your taint.
Yeah, the paper cut stuff is I can't watch it. I just can't. I can't do it. I turn away, or I had to like
especially
skip
when it's
over
in
it.
between
I can't.
the fingers.
The toes and the fingers, like it's just, or the tongue. I get chills just talking about it. It's awful. And then like the stuff where like, you know, they're shitting themselves and different things like that is like, it is this visceral thing where you're like, yeah, I can't say I've seen a man, you know, shit live. But if you've seen those 3 Jackass movies, you've seen it multiple times. But then there are very funny things of like the snake biting the penis because it looks like a mouse going through. It's so funny. Like that's how Jackass 2 or 3 starts. And like what's
or the
his name?
gator biting the nipple.
Oh yeah, the nipple, or the turtle, the snapping turtle on Steve-O's like ass, and like and some of the animal stuff I again is difficult as well, because like it's just these animals you're using for a funny bit and things like that, so I don't think it always works. But I'm very curious to see how you do Jackass at their age and in 2022. I know they've added some younger cast members, a
Eric
woman
Andre's
on the cast.
in it too, right?
Eric Andre shows up. I mean, they've always had cameos from people: Tony Hawk, Matt Hoffman, Spike Jonze, obviously. Like tons of people show up in those movies, and they'll have more in this one. But they have a woman on the cast for the first time, which is great. She liked one of my tweets because I said the "This Is Cinema" thing the other day, and I was like, "Oh shit, she's on the main cast. Good for her." And they've had some younger people, and it almost seems like they're trying to go, "Oh well, if people like this, like there are younger people who want to be morons that will take over if we want to keep doing Jackass movies, right?
Jackass generations."
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. So it was fun to revisit them, but I am very much looking for. I again, guilty pleasures. I don't think by any means they're good movies, but like
I don't know. I think that third film is pretty
one,
inventive in terms of
with
what
3D
they're able
cameras
to
and
do with both the camera setup, but even just the stunts and the skits and how they've kind of evolved, to your point, over the course of those 3 movies and the series itself. And then it is also just interesting, again, going back to the problematic nature of looking like how this thing in that moment of time when MTV was kind of becoming, you know, premier television and sort of tapped into a young audience that would then be inspired. I mean, like you can even look at like what YouTube is now, and mentioning, you know, people doing the hot sauce challenge and stuff like that. It struck a nerve, for better or worse, because you have people also like, you know, Jake Paul going to Japan and being a complete and utter xenophobic racist, and sort of like watching that video and thinking, okay, well, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, some of his inspiration was, or he watched Jackass as a
absolutely
kid. So
yeah,
you know, like that's all of that, for better or worse, I think is wrapped up in the early 2000s sort of mockumentary sort of stunt kind of craze. And you've mentioned it, and I've done it as well, where like I remember getting a camcorder in elementary school in grade 7 and then hanging out with all these people and shooting these Jackass stunts, because it was like at the fever pitch of Jackass being
even
popular.
with that warning, we all did it.
Yeah.
And I mean, they had to put that warning on stuff because so many people were doing it. And mind you, they were the most hardcore thing you would do is like get a shopping cart and push someone into a curb or something and fly,
or jump off a jungle
which
gym
is like,
or something.
Yeah,
like
it's
that.
like still you could have gotten hurt. And luckily, like the only time someone I knew got hurt was more in like the backyard wrestling kind of stuff that we used to do rather than the Jackass stuff. But like I remember doing a backyard wrestling thing at a park, and my friend CJ doing a Twist of Fate, which is a wrestling move from Matt and Jeff Hardy, and the Hardy Boys, Eric, not from the book series, but
do they have a raging clue?
The extreme Hardy Boys. And there was a broken bottle, and he cut his leg, like a bottle went right through his like the front of his leg, and I remember it just being the most traumatizing thing, and like we got in a lot of trouble for it. But like, yeah, I remember again.
This was in Oshawa, right?
Of course,
makes sense.
And just doing all these stupid Jackass things, and I think maybe Mike Munz probably still has the stupid videos somewhere, but like just really, you thought you were being cool, but it was just like, oh, we'll push someone around in a shopping cart and hit them into a curb, which was like the one thing everyone could do because you couldn't make wild contraptions and stuff like that. And we were all morons of like doing dumb shit as a kids, and this was part of the inspiration for that. So there's good and bad from Jackass for sure. I mean, I obviously grew up and grew out of that phase, and I didn't do anything too awful, but it's still enjoyable to watch. Again, to your point, them get more and more creative with the stunts and get less away from the let's just run into a shop and push someone into a bag, like a whole stand of chips or something, and everyone just go, what's going on, and then leave. So I can't wait because the budgets get higher too, so it's just like what contraptions that they can make up that are just both either disgusting or painful or just silly. And I'm very much looking forward to Jackass Forever. I'm hoping we'll be able to kind of see it, and I might go see it with a public crowd because I don't think a press crowd would be a ton of fun if they do a press screening of it, or maybe it's something they would send screeners out for. I'm not sure. Depending, it'll be interesting when we go back to reviewing stuff when this lockdown's over and theaters open up again of what they'll do. I'm sure they'll go back to in person, but maybe I have no idea. But Jackass, definitely a guilty pleasure, and I'm very much looking forward to Jackass Forever. Eric, did you watch anything else that you? I watched The Card Counter.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we could talk about that. We'll have a review for the after party. Both the after party and Card Counter have Tiffany Haddish.
Yeah.
So you caught up with Paul Schrader's follow-up to First Reformed, starring Oscar Isaac.
And a little bit of a spoiler for the after party, as well as my thoughts on Card Counter. I like Tiffany Haddish as a comedian. I don't love her in either of these projects. I think she was my least favorite thing about the after party. And I just felt like she did not work as that character. And then I went back and forth on Card Counter, where certain scenes I was like, oh damn, she's really good in this in this scene. And then there'd be another scene where I'm like, oof, yeah, she's just not super great, or just doesn't have the acting chops for that movie. But Card Counter in general, I kind of went back and forth on it, and I know we're kind of on the same page, where I feel like as a whole it doesn't really work as a follow-up to First Reformed. Like, I still think it's worth watching, and I think it's thematically an interesting spiritual sequel to First Reformed, and I think it's probably better than some of Schrader's stuff that happened pre First Reformed,
like the canyons and Dog Eat Dog and
stuff like that. Light. Yeah, but it still had this weird digital look to it that I didn't love. That was so crisp. I do like, obviously, the aspect ratio continuing from First Reformed, and that's some of the thematic kind of, and it just has like a weird tone to the whole thing. Which also First Reformed had, and just being this character piece on this troubled guy. And I tweeted out that it was the weirdest episode of World Series of Poker that I've ever seen. And I used to watch a lot of World Series of Poker with my dad. And when that Texas Hold'em kind of craze came through, and everyone was into it and watching it and playing online poker and playing with their friends and things like that. So I liked that they incorporated. I'm surprised that World Series of Poker was like, yeah, go ahead, use our branding and everything in this. Just a lot more torture than your typical episode of World Series of Poker. But I liked his friendship with Ty Sheridan, and Oscar Isaac is fantastic in it. I think he is really, really good. I know it's intentionally off-putting, but that fisheye cinematography in those kind of flashbacks to the
Abu Ghraib torture scenes
were, I know that's absolutely why he did it that way, is to make them very off-putting and hard to look at, and it's supposed to just give off that vibe, but it just still didn't really work for me. Um so,
Willem Dafoe's big hand didn't work for you?
Yeah. Or when they're walking and they get smaller, it
Yeah.
just looks like it. I get it that it's absolutely supposed to invoke those kind of like, ugh, I don't like this kind of thing. But I think it worked more in the negative way than the positive way there. But I just like the eeriness, the score, the music choices, just as he's going through and playing cards and getting better at this poker series, and I don't know, there's a lot to like, but I just don't think it completely works.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Schrader, I think is I guess pun intended, returning to form and doing the sort of man on a mission, writing his sort of diary or his perspective internally, but doing it in that kind of voiceover monologue. And you saw that in Taxi Driver. Like he's kind of following the style of Bresson and sort of incorporating Ozu and Dreyer as well, his favorite filmmakers. And it is interesting that you mentioned that, it does feel very much, a spiritual sequel to First Reformed, and I think it'll be really interesting to see if his next movie, which I think he starts shooting in a couple of weeks, Master Gardener, is kind of like a trilogy of these kind of sort of anti-hero characters kind of figuring out their path in the new world while also sort of trying to find some sort of redemption based on their past discretion. So I don't think it's nowhere near as good as First Reformed, but having watched it back in September and thinking about certain scenes, I think when it really does work, it's great. And when it doesn't, it's at least interesting. Like, I don't think the performances are as good as Oscar Isaac. Like, Oscar Isaac really does elevate everybody else around him, including Ty Sheridan and Tiffany Haddish. But, like, I love the scene where, he tells Ty Sheridan point blank, like, what he and his
what he went through,
and his father went through. And it's such an amazing performance. And it's a shame that he hasn't really gotten a lot of awards traction for this. And I mean, obviously Oscar Isaac is a great actor, and obviously the joke is, Paul Schrader is a part of the MCU with both actors being in
honestly, that's that, and that my rental was going to expire in 3 days is because it was a 99-cent rental on, I know we have screeners for it, but it was a 99-cent rental on Apple in 4K. So I was like, I could watch the screener with a watermark, or I could watch the 4K for $1. So I rented the 4K, but then the Moon Knight trailer, which we'll talk about in a second, made me go, oh yeah, okay, Ethan Hawke, Oscar Isaac, Paul Schrader. I should watch Card Counter, which is why I watched it.
Yeah, and again, they're like, I love the opening title credits. I think those are amazing.
The texture on that like felt is so nice,
so
and like
beautiful.
It was so good. But then the movie, I feel like I don't love the look of it. I like some of the sequences and the cinematography in general, but I just didn't like the clarity of it all. Maybe I don't know.
Right, and that goes to sort of the digital cinematography. I wish there was more Willem Dafoe because he has a great name, Gordon. And then also, like, again, there are moments that I think work better in terms of some of the kind of dark comedy. Like, I really love, I think in my like Letterboxd review for it was like, Oscar
Say
Isaac,
hi to your mother for me.
Yeah, like that's it's an amazing moment, and it's so weird that's how it kind of all comes out. But Oscar Isaac is amazing in the movie. I will take 10 Card Counters over another The Canyons or Dog Eat Dog, and I'm just happy that Paul Schrader is back making movies, but also
feels motivated again, like, or something
inspired.
Like that.
There's something in him that is kind of bringing him back to what he was doing in the 70s and early 80s, and sort of kind of like it. I think the biggest criticism you could make is that the Card Counter is very derivative of First Reformed, or just of the best
Taxi
of Paul
Driver,
Schrader's stuff. But I think it works. I just don't think it's necessarily great. But again, I'm also weirdly excited for Master Gardener, which has Joel Edgerton and Sigourney Weaver, and it's supposed to be, again, like this
in
guy,
the same kind of
context of like this gardener who's sort of, you know, in this relationship with both a dowager played by Sigourney Weaver and her granddaughter, who hasn't been cast yet, or at least hasn't been announced. I think he was trying to get Zendaya, but money wise it wasn't working out. But that's the other thing as well with Paul Schrader. It's like, you gotta like, as much as like he is a great writer and his contributions to cinema are fantastic, social media is not the greatest outlet for him, even though sometimes it is.
Even some of the stuff in the
funny.
movie, like yes, it's very funny, and he is problematic at times and not a great dude at other times. And even in the movie, some of the like Asian jokes throughout, and I felt like they kept going back to that, and like, or commentary, I felt like was weirdly targeted, and I was just like, I don't like, there's multiple times where they like, and different people, but it kept going back to that. Or like even the conversation where they described the guy that Oscar Isaac was playing poker against, and the way that he describes it, or they bring up the other guy, and I'm just like, this feels weird. And I'm like, so there's some stuff like that I just, you know, he's someone who has his opinions on things, and they're not always great, but is an interesting filmmaker. I will say that. And I totally agree with you that, you know, it doesn't always work, but it's always interesting. Or even if you don't love what's happening, you're still kind of mesmerized by it. And that's like in First Reformed, I was mesmerized in the way where I'm like, oh this rules. Where this, I was like mesmerized by it, and I go, don't know if I love this, but there's something about it. And I like poker, and I like, you know, casinos, and I like it's just, that vibe was always interesting. And like when they go to the light show and they're just walking through, and the music and the drone cinematography is like, it's just a weirdly
Hypnotic.
put together, hypnotic movie. And that's why I ultimately like liked it. I'm with you where I didn't love it.
I also find it funny that Barack Obama put it on his best of films of 2021, when it's also very critical of the Obama administration for not closing down places like Abu Ghraib. So like, it's one of those things where it's like, I would really be interested to have a conversation with Barack Obama. And
I never know with those lists. Do you think like that's all PR stuff, or do you think he actually watched all those and put it together?
I would hope he would watch those things, because like, again, like, why would you put that on your list?
I'm sure he is a big like arts and entertainment guy, so I would assume that he does. But sometimes I know there are those people that think it's just he has a team, and they go, here's what like the cool people are saying are the best movies of the year, so you put these on your list.
Because he didn't have Flea on the list, which a lot of people were like, oh, we would have thought that he would have watched Flea. But I'm not against that point you're making, where like it could just be his PR team or what have you, but it would be a strange decision to put the card counter on if it was your PR team, especially when, again,
but sometimes I'm like, that means like, do they not actually do their research, and they just go, oh, this or that, or I don't know, whatever. But I think the talk about the card counter can go into a good transition with, we got our first trailer for Marvel Studios Moon Knight, which is what we'll do to wrap up the show here. It's going to be a shorter episode than usual. We're going to try to keep the episodes between an hour and a half. Like the big episodes, like the last two where we're doing like big lists and things like that, will obviously go 3 hours. And I say this now, and Eric and I, I'm sure next week will go 4.5 hours or something, but not a ton of news. We skimmed through things. Unfortunately, like Eric and I mentioned with the passing of Bob Saget, Betty White a few weeks ago,
Sidney Poitier.
Like there's been a lot of unfortunate passings, and talking about Moon Knight. Quickly off the top, Eric, do you know the
Gaspar Ulliel, who's probably best known to Canadian and American audiences. It's weird. Like I know him from a very long engagement, and then also he was the younger version of Hannibal in Hannibal Rising.
Bad movie, but
and then he was in one of Xavier Dolan's movies as well. He? And only 37, died in an accident, a skiing accident. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. Like,
no, it just came out right before we started recording, and I just think like, again, I not to try to tie it directly to Moon Knight, but it looks like it'll be one of the last things that he appears in, because he does have a role in Moon Knight. We don't know how large of a role because he's not in the trailer that we're about to talk about, but just such an 37, way too young, and an accident like that is just awful, and just a real unfortunate thing. And it just seems like we go through these spurts where it feels like, Betty White had a long, amazing life, almost
so
made
did
it
Sidney
to 100.
Poitier.
Yeah. And like, those are, very sad, obviously, and we can celebrate their careers and their lives. But then there are people like, a Bob Saget or
even Norm Macdonald, because both
Norm
those guys,
Macdonald, yeah.
Bob Saget directed Dirty Work, which starred Norm Macdonald, and they were both in their 60s, and they died 4 months apart from each other. And it's kind of like, again, sudden and still too young for like something like that. I mean, obviously in Norm Macdonald's case, it was cancer, but yeah, it's just, unfortunate. And then even with Jean-Marc Vallée back in December,
oh my gosh, yeah,
that's still been bumming me out a lot too.
Did we, not to go too deep, we'll talk afterwards, but yeah, just really unfortunate stuff. And it was just, again, I knew I've seen Hannibal Rising. I'm not super familiar with Gaspard's work, but I was literally, because of Moon Knight, the trailer the other night, clicking and looking up actors who were in this series. And I was kind of doing my Marvel thing because I obsess over it all, and just going through the next couple shows that they have coming out. And I remember being on his Wikipedia page, like literally 2 days ago when the Moon Knight trailer came out. So then when his name popped up today, because it was on a French website who reported it first, because it was in France where it happened, I'm like, that name seems so familiar. And then I went back and I'm like, oh my God, I was just reading about this guy. And 37, just, your career's just, he's had a lot of great stuff that he's appeared in. It's just that you're only getting started at that point. So really, really unfortunate. Sorry to be a bummer there, but then yeah, we did get our first trailer. We got a teaser back on Disney Plus Day for Moon Knight, but this was our first full trailer for Moon Knight, and we got a confirmation that it will be premiering on March the 30th. So after Boba Fett, which we didn't talk about Boba Fett at all, but we'll
hold on.
Oh, did you? Yeah,
I dug it out for this because
they're not called. What are they calling it now? Because they don't
the fire sprayer, because it's not Slave One anymore because of it being politically incorrect. Yeah. Even though I don't think George Lucas intended it to be politically incorrect, because Boba Fett is a bounty hunter who traps people and takes them to who's ever paying him. But I understand why they did it as well.
I get that. Yeah.
But even though we're not talking about it, I did catch up with the series, and the one thing that I think is maybe a little bit intentional, that when you were mentioning it, and it is still distracting, I think it is design wise supposed to, like, I think Boba Fett is supposed to look almost like a child, because this show could have been called The Rebirth of Boba Fett.
Sure.
And I almost feel like him being in the Sarlacc pit is him being reborn and then coming out and sort of being basically reimagined into this anti-hero type character. But it's also strange to think, like, the show is partly very childlike in some ways, but then also it's very dark and serious in others. And Star Wars has always tonally been a very strange series when it comes to, like, what the demographic or the target demographic is, because clearly Star Wars in general is for children, which isn't a bad thing. I'm not saying that, like, it's juvenile. I'm just saying the intention is that these films were made for
younger audiences.
Yeah,
with things that are still appealing to
exactly
adults.
But then you look at something like Revenge of the Sith, and then you have Anakin being burnt alive, and you're thinking to yourself, what
the comparison between Phantom Menace and that?
Yeah, what child wants to see this anti-hero or hero going dark being burnt alive. Like that was like the big complaint with like Jar Jar. It's like Jar Jar's for children, blah blah blah. Well, yeah.
Okay, well we'll burn someone alive in the third one, so don't worry.
Yeah, so it's a weird tonal.
And Boba Fett is like that too. Like the speeder kids with their like colored motorcycles or whatever, they're colored speeders and their Alita Battle Angel mods and stuff like that. Like it's just, yeah, it tonally feels very strange. I'm personally, each episode get less and less interested in it. I'm still obviously going to finish it and watch it, and it's still Star Wars, so I'm still like sort of enjoying it, but I don't like it. But it's the first Star Wars property, and I'm usually pretty forgiving. Like I'm someone who liked all of the sequel trilogy, which there's not very many of us. So like I'm someone who likes Last Jedi as well as Rise of Skywalker, and which I don't think that Venn diagram is super huge. And like, you know, I don't watch a lot of the animated stuff. I watched some of it. I loved Visions. We talked about it here and on Kind of Funny. And but Star Wars, again, we every week I think we talk about that. It's in a weird spot, and I think Boba Fett just feels like, I don't know, it has that Star Wars problem for me where, and I'm kind of repeating myself, but like even today's episode, which is not really a spoiler, but if you don't want to hear about it, click out for the next minute.
The Gathering Storm is the name of the episode.
Why did I need a whole episode of how he gets his ship back and how he fixes Fennec Shan? Like my problem with this whole series is that it's giving us, and Star Wars in general, with the prequels and Solo and anything where they're showing stuff that we already kind of know what happened, but we don't know exactly what happened, is like, I can fill in those blanks. Like I don't need you to show me every moment that led to Boba Fett showing up on Mandalorian. Like I got it. He got his ship back. He fixed her up. They're partners now. I don't need it. None of it was that interesting to show me for 45 minutes today of how he got to that point. I'm like, advance the story in the quote unquote present, which is still the past, in the continuity. But like, I don't need to know how he got his ship back from Bib Fortuna. It's just not that interesting. Like I know he got his ship back. Like, and it's the same problem Star Wars has had, was like, okay, where are the gaps we have in the story? Okay, we know this person is here at this point and they have these items on them, but we didn't show how they got those items. But, you know, can the audience just fill in the blanks? Well, they could, but why don't we show them? Well, if we show them, it's not going to be that interesting, but I guess we think it's interesting. So let's show them, because maybe people are dumb and go, well, how did Boba Fett get that stuff back? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, well, yeah, it does. Cause you can just kind of fill in these blanks. And like, sometimes that's more interesting than the answers that you give. And I just feel like that's my issue with this. All of the flashback stuff is just the Star Wars problem of spoon feeding us every detail and not trusting your audience to know that, yeah, he has that shit. It doesn't matter how he got it, unless it's like crazy or unbelievably cool or has some giant twist. Like even going back to the Sarlacc pit is just like, why? We know his armor's not there. We know the Jawas have it.
Well, he doesn't know that because he was knocked out by the Jawas and then by the Tusken Raiders. But I do agree where it's like, it is retreading things that you don't necessarily need. And Solo was obviously a perfect example of that, where it's like, we don't need you to fill in the gaps of Han Solo's sort of legacy and sort of how he became Han Solo. But what I will say about the Book of Boba Fett that I do kind of like, I think,
the theme rips.
The theme is amazing. The main theme is incredible, but I do like the idea of the present day stuff of Boba Fett taking over Jabba's throne and sort of creating this new sort of legacy for himself. And I think that that's kind of interesting in terms of like the politics and all that kind of stuff. But it
gets so bogged down with
and I actually did like him hanging out with the Tusken Raiders. Like I didn't mind that. I just think what's McClunky about it is sort of the narrative flashbacks. And I even really like his healing chamber. I think that like just the look of the show is very reminiscent of why I love Star Wars.
Sure.
It has this tactile quality to it, but I don't disagree with what you're saying either, where I think it's just explaining everything and, to your point, filling in the gaps where, you know, you can make those
those
assumptions for
assumptions.
yourself
And you're
and
just
how you
spending
got there.
so much time on it. And like, I don't disagree with what you're saying about the Tuscan Raiders or any of that stuff. It's just like those flashbacks needed to be paced out better. It's just like the way that they do it, where he goes in the what's it, the back the tank or whatever, and like
Yeah, the healing chamber, yeah.
and then that's how the flashbacks kind of come in, and then you spend these large chunks in the flashbacks, and even the way that they in today's episode where he's caught up now to the present, and they're like, you're healed now, which is basically like, we have no more flashbacks, so you're all healed now, you don't need to go in this chamber anymore. And it's just so, it's stuff like that I'm just like, man, you didn't need to do it this way, and there could have been a more interesting way to pace these flashbacks out over these episodes and maybe not have as many of them, because I feel like we're spending so much time in the past that present stuff, which is like actually kind of interesting with the Hutt cousins and like, and Black Cardassian, and like the him trying to take over and do this new order in Mos Espa is just like kind of interesting. But I feel like today's episode really, I'm like, why am I spending 30 minutes on this stuff and then I get 10 minutes of the present, when last week you ended on a cliffhanger of like a war is coming? And I'm just like, now I need to know how Fennec Shand and him got together, and like he saved her in Mandalorian. Like, why is this episode? I'm like, why wasn't this placed better in this series? And I think that's what I'm frustrated with overall, because I do think that there is some cool stuff in there. But
Well, Fennec
anyways,
Shen also being repaired in that one sequence. I like the score,
yeah,
but it almost sounded like there's this like steampunk-esque sort of battle angel
yeah,
sequence where she's getting repaired and they're putting in the pieces into her stomach. The score almost sounded like Prodigy's Firestarter,
yeah, yeah,
but it sounded like this kind of like almost, you know, like one you'd get off like a CD compilation that is non-licensed, so you don't have to worry about like, you know, any company paying for it. But it does sound like Prodigy's Firestarter for some
yeah.
weird reason. But then again, I guess maybe because I was thinking about that, because Firestarter is also used in Yellow Jackets, and then Sophie Thatcher is in both Yellow Jackets and the Book of Boba
Yeah,
Fett, so
shout out
maybe
to
that's
her.
blending it all
Yeah.
together. But yeah, the present day stuff is the best stuff, and it seems like the last two episodes are setting it up for just present day now, unless they're going to show you like something that'll
No, I
bring
think like even that
Pedro
one,
Pascal back in. I don't know.
he could show up in the last episode, I think, to set up Mandalorian season 3, because they wouldn't have needed him on set. They could just have him do a quick voiceover, right, and
Yeah.
have his stunt doubles. So I wouldn't be totally surprised if a lot of this is set up for Mandalorian season 3 and gets them together again. I don't know, but I also just don't really care. So I'm curious to. I don't know. I'm still obviously curious for these final 2 episodes, but I think I'm going to call it there, and I think we should do a separate conversation, just a quick conversation over on the Conversations channel and on YouTube on Moon Knight, because we do have to wrap up for scheduling reasons right now. But I'd say you guys can check out Eric and I will do a conversation and a trailer reaction to Moon Knight over on YouTube. So just go to search Untitled Movie Podcast on YouTube. You guys can subscribe over there, or it'll be on the Conversations feed on podcast services. Because I just think, you know, I like doing those trailer analysis, and just to kind of throw it in for 5-10 minutes on the end of this episode, I don't think makes sense. But a fun episode, Eric. Thank you for joining me. Guys, we mentioned go over to Untitled Movie Reviews, where we'll have reviews for Yellow Jackets. We'll have a review for the first 3 episodes of Peacemaker. We'll have a review for the first 3 episodes of The After Party, as well as the new Coen, not Coen Brothers,
Joel
film,
Coen.
Joel Coen, Tragedy of Macbeth, as well as we'll have a review for Pam and Tommy pretty soon, but maybe that's in February as well. But we'll be doing a lot of kind of TV and streaming stuff, so keep your eyes locked over on Untitled Movie Reviews. I know we haven't had a review up for even this new year yet, but we should start to get stuff going, and let's cross our fingers that theaters open soon, and we'll have reviews for Scream and Jackass Forever and things like that. As long as theaters are open before Batman, that's all I
Or
need.
Morbius.
God. Thank you all for listening. As always, my name is Matt Rohrbeck. You can find more of my work around the internet, but mostly at UntitledMoviePodcast.com. And you can follow me on all those social medias at Matt Rohrbeck.
And I'm Eric Marchin. You can find more of my video reviews on RogersTV.com/CinemaScene and on the social medias at EM6211.
Until next time.
Tim Horton's iced coffees suck.